All right, hi everyone, welcome to this video on Bitcoin network security. This video is part of a broader course on the fundamentals of Bitcoin on-chain analysis. I'm Bitmaniac and I'll be your host. So to put this video in context, we're using the three-part pyramid framework from the guys at ARK Invest. We are looking at the bottom of that pyramid, the first layer, which is all about Bitcoin network health. And in the previous video, we talked about Bitcoin's monetary policy. I encourage you to watch all of these videos in order. I think you'll find it really helpful. And in this video, we'll cover network security. So let's get right into it. So the Bitcoin network is secured by so-called miners. And hash rate, the amount of computing power in the Bitcoin network, is the key security metric. So the more hash rate, the greater the security and overall resistance to attack. And the reason behind this is simple. To attack the network, you need to control at least 51% of the network hash rate. So the more hash rate the network has, well, the harder it is to control 51% of it. Hashing is done with specialist equipment called ASICs. In the very early days, you could mine Bitcoin from your home computer, but those days are long gone. It's now a very competitive industry and you have no chance if you don't have the most advanced equipment. So on the left here, you see what a modern ASIC looks like. This is the Antminer S19. It's a popular model. It delivers 95 terahash per second and costs several $1,000s. And because these babies are very loud, they produce a lot of heat and they require massive amounts of electricity, well, ASICs are operated on rigs in specialized warehouses located close to cheap sources of electricity and away from annoying neighbors that would complain about the noise. So you can see an example of a mining farm on the right hand side. So you're probably wondering, well, how much would it cost to break the network? And well, we can use the information on this page to get a rough estimate. So currently there is about 150 million terahash second connected to the network, which is approximately equivalent to about 1.6 million of these ASICs. So if you do the math, you'll see that it basically costs billions of dollars just to buy the equipment necessary to attack the network. And this is just the cost to buy the equipment, right? You would also need to spend a fortune to run the machines and pay for the electricity. And so this is why the network is so resilient and why nobody has managed to hack it ever. Now, another important aspect of trying to hack the network is the logistics of trying to do this. ASICs are application specific, which means that they aren't used for anything else than hashing, in this case mining. And so you can't just rent a bunch of ASICs that are currently used to power something else and use that against the Bitcoin network. If you wanted to hack Bitcoin, you would need to acquire lots of ASICs, and there's a shortage of them, right? They're in high demand. There's long waiting times for orders. So basically, you can't just throw a lot of money at this. You can't just buy a ton of ASICs, get them delivered to your house next week, and use them to mess up the Bitcoin operations. Such a plan would take months, if not years, to put together simply just to source the equipment. So if a government really wanted to control the network, it would have to seize equipment that's existing in mining facilities, right? So that's why the geographical decentralization of mining equipment is so important, and we'll touch on that shortly. So the total hash rate gives us an indication for how difficult it is to hack the network, and that's why it's an important metric, and we like to monitor this metric and its evolution. So many sites track this metric. Here I'm using Glassnode. Both price and hash rate are plotted using a log scale. Hash rate is in orange and the price is in black. You can see that both are going up in sync, which is very healthy. You can also look at the same data but on a linear scale, and you can see how much both price and hash rate has increased with time. So the incentive system works so that the more valuable the network is, the more protected it becomes. Miners get paid in Bitcoin, and as the price appreciates, they're incentivized to buy more hardware, to connect more hash rate to the network, which in turn then increases the security of the network and makes the network more valuable. So it's a beautifully designed positive feedback loop. So why are we talking about this, and why is this important? Well, simply because as the network becomes more valuable, there's an increased incentive to try and hack it. And simply, that's why we need more hash rate to defend it. And so far, it's working well. But if the hash rate stopped growing and was to decline meaningfully, then the network would be at risk and security could be compromised. So keep an eye on this. It's a really an important health metric. And one question that gets asked a lot is, well, how much hash power do we need for Bitcoin to be secure? And there's no answer to that, really. There's no specific threshold, right? It's a continuum of increasing security. There is a lot of hash rate right now. Some expert would argue that there's so much hash rate that this hash rate could drop by 50 or even 80%, and the network would still be extremely secure. So what you need to remember is that the Bitcoin network is really secured by this immense computational power and energy use. And this is an important point. These miners, they consume a lot of electricity. You often hear Bitcoin critics say that Bitcoin consumes more electricity than some small countries, and that's true. Mining is very energy intensive, right? It's meant to be that way. And the question is, well, is this a useful use of energy? And of course, the Bitcoiners would argue that it is. So as hash rate continues to climb up, you can really imagine that this energy consumption critiques will become louder. It's actually pretty hot at the time of recording of this video in May 2021. China has just announced that it would be banning Bitcoin mining for a bunch of reasons. And then you can see the hash rate is fluctuating a lot in recent weeks. And I'm saying all of this to give you some context into what's going on, and to explain that hash rate can temporarily dip for various reasons, but it's really the longer term trend that matters for you as an investor. So as we've just discussed, miners are here to protect the network, and therefore we want to make sure that they're getting paid well. The chart here shows total miner revenue in orange, and so this is the sum of the Bitcoin mined by the miners, aka the block reward, and also the transaction fees that users pay the miners. So in order to have a healthy and a secure network, we want to make sure that the miners are getting paid well. At the moment, the mining community is making about $50 to $60 million per day, and this is really an all-time high. So it's very healthy that these guys are getting paid well, and it's good for the network. So I encourage you to monitor this from time to time just to make sure that it's trending in the right direction. All right, so let's talk about a very important topic, which is the distribution of miners. So miners often get together in so-called mining pools. So these are groups of miners that team up, and they do so to reduce the volatility of their earnings. It makes a lot of sense for them to be doing this. Otherwise, they run the risk of potentially not getting paid for months and months, which is a problem considering that they have operational costs that need to be paid on a regular basis. Now, the problem is that if these mining pools get too big, well, they become attractive attack surfaces, right? Someone could try to attack the network by controlling one of the big mining pools, or one of the big mining pools could just simply go rogue and try to do something funny. So the graph here shows the distribution of hash rate by mining pool over time. So I've linked to the source. It's a site called The Block, and what's important here is that there's a range of different pools, and that not a single pool takes over a majority of the hash rate. So I encourage you to monitor this occasionally just to make sure that these pools don't get too consolidated. It's also important to track the geographical location of miners. And this isn't information that we can track on chain, so we have to rely on third-party estimates. So here we're looking at an estimate done by Cambridge University. It's updated periodically, and you can access it for free through the link below. It shows the distribution of hash rate by country. So China definitely stands out as being by far the largest contributor, with 65% of total global hash rate mid-2020. So it's not particularly great to have so much reliance on a single country. If the Chinese government were to take over all the Bitcoin miners, that would be very bad for Bitcoin. Now, the good news is that the hash rate is growing in other countries, and the relative share of China seems to be falling, right? if you go to this report and you play around with it, you'll see that it allows you to go back in time. And we can see that in Q3 2019, China had a 75% share of all Bitcoin mining. And a year later, mid-2020, the share was down to 65%. So clearly the Chinese share is going down, and that's good news. And there's also recent news in May 2021, as I filmed this video, coming out of China that says that the government is trying to ban Bitcoin mining. So it's a bit too early to see the impact of all of that. But this, could actually be a very good thing in terms of mining decentralization. And it's also positive to see that the hash rate is increasing in countries who aren't on friendly terms. So for example, if you look at these countries here on the graph, there's the US, Russia, Iran, Venezuela. So it's really unlikely that the leaders of these countries would all meet up together, and light a cigar, pour some cognac, and agree on some international ban on Bitcoin mining. So to summarize, the more decentralization in Bitcoin mining, the better. All right, cool. So this concludes our video on network security. If you have any questions or comments, shoot them below and I'll answer as soon as I can. If you're watching this on YouTube and you found this useful, go on and smash that like button, feed the algo, and then head over to the next video. We're going to talk about how to assess network growth, which is an extremely important topic. So I'll see you there.